Hey people, Shinobi no Kami here. In this fanfic, most people believed the Yondaime to be Naruto's father, but they were wrong. His actual father had to watch as Kyuubi was sealed into his newborn son and sent into a world of hatred. And now, he wants vengeance. Check the description and give a sub to my thumbnail maker God Kage Theories. Hit the like button and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and if you want to make suggestions or something else, tell me in the comment section. Now let's roll the intro. Chapter 66. Working in the training grounds of Konoha and wielding his Zanbato was Haku, the sworn brother of Naruto Uzumaki. He was slashing and stabbing at imaginary targets as the feminine-looking boy was working on his technique with his former master's blade. They had achieved a string of victories as of late, ambushing the forces of Iwa and Snow and sending them packing and retreating using guerrilla tactics against them. These were small victories, but no doubt being a thorn in their side. A group of 10 or more will discover a force and then ambush them from out of nowhere using kunai, shuriken, and jutsus to attack from all sides. Even dressing up as farmers and peasants and feigning submission and fear to them and attacking them when their backs were turned. If the enemy was too many, they would do a quick attack on them and then sneak away and fight them at a different time. Any Iwa nin or Jushinist caught marching on the roads leading to Konoha or Oto risked death. That had been putting dents into them and decreasing their morale, as it forced them to double the guard and keep them on edge at all time. As he was practicing, he heard footsteps. He turned his head and saw to his surprise not Naruto or a ninja of sound but Hiyashi Hyuga, the head of the Hyuga clan and Hinata's father. He was escorted by 2 Hyuga who were Anbu. Haku wondered what he was doing here. The man looked at him sternly as Haku put his weapon back in its sheath. "Can I help you, Hiyashi-sama?" he asked him. "Haku, was it not? I remember you defeating Neji at the exams months back. I must admit your skill is surprising, as many did not believe he would have been defeated." He said to him, "It has also come to my mind that my daughter Hinata during the time period appeared as if she developed feelings for you." Haku looked at him. Hinata was posing as Hanbei Iori in the coalition, and he was training her in secret and helping her get better. "Hinata is a child and holds an important position as my heir. She is working with the medics, I am told," Hiyashi said as he believed the girl was with the medics, unaware of what she was really doing, as he had forbidden her from joining the coalition. "Tell me, what do you think of my daughter?" Haku stared at the intimidating clan leader. "Hinata, although she in your eyes possesses little skills, has a great spirit within her. She appears to be a fragile flower, yet she is stronger than she appears. She is kind and caring and shy as well, but she won't let herself be bullied, and if she was given better training would become a good ninja. Her self-esteem is low and that causes her to appear weak, but once she gains confidence and believes in herself, she can hold her own. That is what I see in her." Hiyashi looked at him in surprise. "You seem to know much about my daughter, Haku. Too much for my taste. I'm sure you understand the principles of class and stature." Haku frowned at him and he went on. "Hinata, as my heir and the heir to the most powerful clan in Konoha, is a princess, as she is among the main Hyugas. When she is older, no doubt she will be put in an arranged marriage with another clansman. She is expected to go along that path and honor the clan. You, however, are of a lower background. You were once a bandit of mist working for Zabuza Momochi and are now a ninja of another village and country. Although you are a chunin and a talented ninja, I do not doubt that it has come to my attention that you have been meeting with her when she is working with the medics," he said, as Hinata, to keep him thinking she was obeying his orders, had been working with the medics at a part-time rate and training and working with the sound ninja at other times. He then frowned at Haku. "Don't take me for a fool, boy," he said, and Haku sensed the threat in his voice. "She is smitten with you, but I won't allow this. She is of a different world than you are, despite this crush she has on you. The Hyuga Council is upset over the fact that the heir is smitten with a ninja of another village." Haku scowled at him. "Are they upset because I am actually treating her like a human being instead of a disgrace to a clan?" I've treated her with more kindness and care than her entire clan has. I'm sorry if she is failing your high expectations of her, but she is a lot stronger than you think. Someone just needs to actually treat her like a person for a change. She is my friend, and this is the happiest I've seen her when people actually compliment her for a change instead of degrading her. She is your daughter, try treating her like one instead of renouncing her for her faults. Hiyashi frowned at the boy. I will only say this once, if anything comes of this friendship between my daughter and you, I will be most displeased. The Hyuga clan has its image to uphold, and I will not see my daughter ruin it by frolicking around with some former bandit. He said, and mentioning to his guards turned and left the training grounds. Haku scowled as he watched him go, thinking the man a fool for placing his clan's image over everything else during these times. Elsewhere, Anko Mitarashi looked over the site of the short battle that had happened. They had routed the enemy, surprising them and ambushing them with their tactics. The Jonin nodded, pleased with the work. It was just a small force they ambushed and easily able to defeat them. Get the wounded tended to, she called out, giving orders to the leaf, sound, and sand ninjas some had gotten hurt. If there's anything of value in that wagon, take it, she said as they had been escorting a wagon and walked over to it. Hey, check it out. Chunin and Jonin vests, said Sakin as he and his brother sorted out the items in it. There were 11 vests that signified the rank of Chunin or Jonin, although they would be useless since they were of earth. He and Ukin checked the wagon looking for loot or supplies and tossed out anything they thought was useless, which by the way they were tossing things out was a lot. Keep those vests, we could use them later, Dosu Kinuta said as he looked over the items as they looked around. Choji narrowly avoided having a small chest filled with papers hit him in the head. Anko looked over the papers that were thrown out as they were letters sent between the Tsuchikage and his allies. They have been trying to get Cloud to join their side, it looks like. That's not good, she muttered as that was the last thing they needed. A book suddenly hit her in the head, thrown carelessly. Who did that? She snapped, a killing look in her eyes and turned to the brothers who pointed at the other. Scowling, she got ready to throw the book at them when she noticed the symbol on it. She recognized that symbol, it was the symbol that was on those crazy guys who attacked Konoha. What's this? A journal, she muttered and opened it. She found she couldn't understand the words in it as it was in a language she didn't understand. Thinking that it might be useful, she decided to keep it. It would be a waste to bash it against the idiots' skulls. Alright, let's head back, we're done here, she said, giving an order as she reminded herself to give it to the Hokage or Jiraiya. At Iwagakure. My lord, they are ready, Jongmao said as he entered the throne room of the Tsuchikage. The experiment is finished and they are now yours to command, he said to Kage Sosano. Excellent, send them in, he ordered, and Jongmao bowed. Soon 5 large heavily armored beings stepped into the room. Their footsteps echoed across the room as they marched. Their skin was a purplish color and each of them carried a weapon. All wore masked helmets to cover their faces. The largest in the front was Wamok, who was believed to have died after Kage's failed attempt to destroy the bridge and wave. The 5 stood side to side as they had demonic eyes. Those 5 survived the experimentation and have greatly increased their power. Jashin's blessing was with them as they will be your personal guard, my lord, Jongmao said to him. No doubt there will be assassins coming for you, my lord. These men shall protect you with their lives. And do not doubt they will be hard to kill. If they survive the experiment, they can survive the strongest of blows. Hidan looked over them and nodded in approval of the fellow Jashinist. By your report you took 50 men and 45 of the bastards died. But this will do, their power and strength has increased and will fight like demons. They will crush all who threaten Kage like roaches, he said with a wicked smile on his face. Does this please you? He asked the man seated on the throne, who nodded. Then Jashin is pleased as well, he said. Kage seated on his throne never felt so powerful. He and Jashin were one, the Dark Lord's power coursing throughout him. But there were problems. Sake see, he called out, and a ninja with spiky brown hair who wore a gas mask of sorts stepped forward and bowed to him as he was one of his top ninjas. I have been disappointed with you as of late. What do you mean? I have been all but loyal to you ever since you took command of Earth. The ninja said, a look of concern on his face. Loyal yes, but competent no, he said, and pointed one of his rings at him and a beam of energy came out of it. Suddenly the floor started to give way. These attacks on my men have been those under your command. The allied scum are cutting down your men like wheat and you do nothing. Our supply lines have been attacked due to your incompetence. The floor suddenly disappeared, replaced with a deep pit, and he fell through. The ninja screamed in horror as he fell into the darkness. Kage then fired another beam of energy at him and hit him and levitated him out of the hole and onto solid footing. The hole returned back to the floor and the man was shaken. I will give you another chance because I am merciful, but Jashin is not. He said to him, and he bowed, asking for forgiveness. Go train your men now. He ordered, and the masked ninja ran out of the room hastily obeying his commands. Shingen, Kanbei, Noheim Ori. He ordered again, and the three stepped forward, 2 men and a woman. I have decided to give you 3 a power boost. Should you survive it, that is. He said as he stood up and then aimed his rings at them. Before the 3 could do anything, beams of energy came out of them and hit them in the neck area. The 3 cried out in pain and clutched their necks as slowly seals that looked like the symbol of Jashin appeared on them. Hidan recognized what he was doing as he was planting Jashin's cursed seal on them. He smirked as Jashin himself would give his followers seals on them, and Kage had learned to do that as well. He was learning well the power he now possessed due to his joining with Jashin. Kage stopped and the 3 fell to their knees and clutched their necks as the seal was on their skin. You have survived the process. In battle, activate the cursed seal and you shall gain Jashin's blessing and become more powerful. He said to them, who nodded. He then turned to all in the room. Jashin and I are one, his will is my command. This land shall be his. Elsewhere in Grass Country, the ruler of the place was a man who was known for his lust of gold and wealth. His name was Goemon Yamatai, and he was eagerly awaiting a shipment to be delivered to him. The shipment was to be of gold from Iwagakure. The Kage was paying him large amounts of gold secretly in order for Grass to join them and ally with them. This news was discovered by the Allied forces, and knowing they would have another potential enemy, knew they had to stop that shipment as they could not risk another enemy. Naruto Uzumaki had taken Ino Yamanaka, Tayuya, Yukimaru, Tenten, Shino Aburame, Kankuro, and Sakura Haruno along with him to stop that shipment from reaching him, as they didn't need more problems. He also borrowed Sai from Root as well, although Danzo didn't seem so pleased with his men joining them. Alright, there are 3 shipments and the first target is sighted. If we manage to get the gold, we will stop them from joining forces and might be able to throw a party tonight. He said to the group. You all know what to do? He asked, and they all nodded. Unknown to Naruto, he was being watched in secret by what appeared to be a plant but was actually a puppet that had a radio in it that overheard the conversation. Hey, your kid is showing signs of talent, Snake. The puppet master Sasori in his usual get-up said, commenting on his former partner's son. But let's see how well they will do. He said to himself as he was watching what the boy was going to do. Moving quietly through the woods, 3 of them discovered the first shipment that was to be delivered. The blonde saw it and smirked as she made hand symbols and aimed at one of the guards escorting the man who pulled the wagon carrying a chest. Ino's eyes closed and she fell unconscious as her jutsu went into effect. One of the guards stumbled suddenly and stopped in his tracks. His fellow comrades asked what was the problem, and he responded that he was fine and rejoined them. He then suddenly slammed the back of his weapon of one of the others, catching them off guard. He then gave a shout and suddenly a puppet-like ant creature appeared along with a scarecrow-shaped one. The scarecrow opened its mouth and released poisonous gas onto them. The men coughed loudly and tried to cover themselves from being poisoned and were suddenly taken down with swift attacks by the ant puppet. That's the first one, Kankuro said as he had controlled the puppets Karasu and Kurori. You guys took the antidote right? He asked the group as Ino returned to her original body, which was carried by the other teammate. Let's see what's inside, he said with a grin, and getting a kunai smashed the lock and opened the chest. Awesome, he said as he looked at the contents. I could get some sweet tools for my puppets with this. Ino looked at the golden jewels and a greedy look appeared in her eyes. Screw that, I could buy over 100 dresses with this, she said as she stared at the golden coins and picked them up. The lid was suddenly shut, much to their annoyance. This gold isn't for us, Shino Aburame said as he shut the lid tight and locked it. It's not meant for our own use. Let's return to the others now, he said and picked it up out of the reach of their greedy hands. The 2 frowned at him and attempted to persuade him to let them take 50% of it, the way back to no avail. Goemon was getting angry as the gold he was promised hadn't shown up, and he sent some of his men to go find what was keeping them. His men found the second shipment and started to escort them to his place. Along the way they found the mist around them was starting to get stronger to their confusion. They got on edge as they marched as they couldn't see a thing and soon had to stop as they ran the risk of tripping over things. Suddenly out of nowhere a voice cried out, "So sure you." Two scrolls then appeared and shot up into the air emitting smoke into the shape of two dragons. A girl with her hair in buns leapt into the middle of it and threw dozens of shurikens and kunai at them. To their shock and they were cut down and the man dragging the wagon ran off. A black-haired shinobi cut down the rest as he drew birds and had them carry explosive tags and they went off. 10-10 landed as the mist disappeared. "Nice work Yukimaru, the plan worked perfectly," she said to the 10-year-old who had casted the mist while she had gotten set up. The polite boy smiled at her and picked up the chest, the silent ninja not saying a word. "We need to make sure this doesn't get in their hands. Let's head back," she said and the two went on their way. By now Goemon was starting to get furious. He was promised gold and he had been given none. He was being made to look like a fool here. At the third and final shipment the chest was heavily guarded and it was the largest of the three. Being watched by the three they knew they had to be more careful with this one. The man leading the cart thought he heard a noise and sent some of his men to find the source of it. The two searched the woods and flushed out a rabbit which ran off and they figured it to be what made the noise. The two started to return to the cart when they was suddenly grabbed from behind and pulled into the woods. The leader of the group noticed them fall back into line marching near the chest. Normally he wouldn't have bothered with it but he noticed that behind the masks and helmet they wore one of them had pink hair and was a girl. There were no girls in his squad. His suspicion was high as he glared at the two. Suddenly the sound of a flute was heard as music filled the air. The group stopped wondering where it was coming from. Suddenly three large ape-like creatures wielding clubs appeared out of nowhere and attacked them. "Protect the chest," the leader of the group shouted and the two closest to it reached over and pulled it off the wagon. "Whoa, this thing is heavy," Sakura said as she had to use all her strength that Tsunade had taught her to carry it. The two were actually her and Naruto who had ambushed the two and took their uniforms and armor and slid into place while Tayuya had made the distraction. They started to run off with it when Sakura was tripped and fell down and her helmet fell off revealing her full features. "What the? She's not one of us. Kill her," the leader shouted to his men who saw her. Naruto cursed their luck and drew his kusanagi out as he protected Sakura. He avoided the stabs of one and punched him in the face. He sure hoped the others would get here soon or he could be in trouble as there was nearly 50 of them although he had help with Tayuya's doki. "What is going on here?" a loud voice shouted and Naruto turned and saw riding up on horseback from a distance away but gaining ground fast Lu Xiang, his halberd in hand. He cursed to himself. He didn't think he would be here. Knowing that right now he couldn't fight him and that even if he did he wouldn't be able to beat him by himself, he pulled Sakura up and the two quickly headed into the woods. "After them. Kill those maggots," Lu Xiang shouted and barked orders to the cart to continue delivering the gold. Dodging arrows and jutsus the two meet up with Tayuya. "Let's get out of here now," he shouted and she nodded as the three ran off and put good distance between them. Joining up with the others with the gold they had gotten, the 9 decided it was too risky to try to get the gold again. They decided to head back to Konoha and report the mission as they had gotten a good amount of gold. At Konoha, Enko entered the Hokage's chambers and saw her and Shizune looking over reports. "Tsunade-sama, we attacked a force and managed to defeat them. Also we discovered a wagon and I found this book. Do you know what it is?" she asked her and handed it to her. Tsunade looked at the book as she noticed the symbol that was on it. She opened it and looked at the words and shook her head. "I can't, I can maybe make out one of every 30 words. This is a language that no one remembers now. This language is ancient. Who knows what it says? I can read it for you Tsunade-hime," a voice said and all three turned around and saw Orochimaru standing in the doorway. Immediately Anko scowled at her former sensei and he smirked at her. "You can read this language Orochimaru?" Tsunade asked him skeptically and he walked forward ignoring the daggers Anko sent him. "Yes, as a matter of fact I can. During my research I learned the language. I have seen a similar book like that before but it was in a different language. That book is actually a Bible for followers of Jashin," he said and they looked surprised at him. "Hidan always carried one around with him, I recognize that book anyplace." "Well then, since you can read it why don't you tell us what it says?" Tsunade asked as she shoved it into his arms. The snake smirked and opened it and let out a cough as he began to read it. For those who read this, know that this is true. I may be gone from this world, but my followers shall see to it that I won't simply disappear. I have ascended to a higher place beyond the bonds of mere mortals. I am now a god of destruction, evil, and death that fears nothing. My mortal body is cast aside, but that was just a vessel. My followers and the land shall worship me for an eternity, as one day the world shall be mine and mine alone. I Jashin, former ruler of the land of iron and ruler of all that I survey. Jashin. You mean he was actually a person? I thought he was just a cult figure that they worshipped. Tsunade said out loud. Apparently not, he replied and turned the page. Jashin, our great lord, was born in the land of iron before it was called that. The land was in chaos back then due to the infidels of the world. He rose up and gathered power and conquered iron as his first set of conquest. He is a warrior of unmatched strength and power, a dealer of death who slays all who opposes him in agonizing ways. Not merely settled with one piece of land, he attacked the land that is now water and conquered it and set it ablaze, burning its boats and navy. His followers numbered in the thousands, and each swore their lives to him as they fought for him and killed all who opposed him. A source of his power was in his rings that he had created and put part of his chakra into. 8 rings with jewels in them and made of gold. Only a follower of Jashin can use their true power, as a non-believer would think them for mere trinkets. He said, and they figured them to be the rings the Kage wore. Orochimaru turned a page and continued reading. Jashin demands blood, that much is true. To paint entire villages and countries red with their blood. All followers are demanded to kill at least one person in battle and make it a good kill. If they fail, may they beg for forgiveness from him, as he shows little mercy to those who failed him. Jashin in the old world conquered much of the land and was feared with his army throughout the land as a devil in human skin by the rest of the world. Those that opposed him were given 2 choices, death or life as his slaves. He would destroy entire villages and cities in his conquest of the land, sparing no one that got in his way. Corpses shall be piled up and then burned as a reminder to the land what will happen if they oppose his power. Turning another page, he read again. Jashin had reigned control of much of the land, and his army sounded like the legions of the underworld itself, which all Jashinists aspire to, as they are his servants and everything they do is devoted to him and him only. He has an appetite for death and destruction that knows no equals, and countless countries and civilizations have been wiped off the map for their foolishness in resisting him. He and his followers, we believe that chakra is the ultimate source of power and that war is the only solution to conflicts. Jashin with his great army crushed all who opposed him, and soon all but a small piece of land remained. His army was unbeatable as he slain all who opposed him, no matter the numbers, as he was undefeatable in battle as his reign we shall see to it last for a millennium. The land was in a state of war long ago, long past the memories of any living ninja, Tsunade said as she listened to him. Jashin was just thought of as a myth. I can't believe he was actually a person. His methods and tactics must have been brutal, as the people who died during the time were beyond count. There's more, Orochimaru said and turned another page. A fool has dared risen up to oppose Jashin, an imbecile whose name shall not be mentioned, as he is a curse upon our lips to say who he was. The man, being a priest, rose up and opposed Jashin-sama and his ways, claiming he was killing everyone for the sake of blood. Claiming that chakra should be used for peace. The man was revered as a shining hope, and people rose up and began to revolt against his rule. Jashin, deciding to deal with him, fought him in one-on-one combat. The damn sage, may he be cursed forever, defeated him via treachery and ended his rule. Jashin was murdered, and as his followers we were unable to control the revolting crowd, as this was just one of the many atrocities he committed against us. Many of our brethren died or abandoned us. But we learned that Jashin-sama is still alive. He has merely ascended to a higher plane and is now our god. Due to the war that broke out after his death and the accursed sage spreading his words, we have lost much power, but we are determined. One day, Jashin-sama shall return to this world and regain control of it. And then the age of Jashin shall continue. Orochimaru then closed the book and looked at them. So Jashin did exist at one time, but after his death became a god and told his followers to continue his work for him. They must see this war as the time to continue his rule. Tsunade stared at him. Now we know what it is we are fighting. They will not stop unless we destroy all of them. Silence was in the room as none said a word. Orochimaru was the first to speak. Then it appears we have much work ahead of us. Chapter 67. The morale of the coalition had been at an all-time high ever since they had begun during guerrilla-style tactics. They knew they could not beat the forces of Iwagakure and the Jashinists in a straight battle, so instead they devised hit-and-run tactics. Hitting them when they least expected it and mowing them down, and if the odds looked overwhelming, sneak away and fight them at another time. They were disrupting their supply lines as well as damaging them and ruining their planned advances. They could not risk sending forces out to attack when they would stretch out their lines and leave them open for attack. At Yugakure, the strategist of the Tsuchikage teared a report up and tossed it to the ground. "Can none of you do anything at all?" He snapped loudly at his men. "How difficult is it to find them and stop them?" "Sir, we can't find them," Sake said to him. "They strike when we least expect it and disrupt our lines. They won't fight us where we can see them. Then fight them on their terms." He snapped at him. "If they won't fight like an army, then use their own tactics against them. They're nothing but a rabble armed with crude weapons who can't fight out in the open. Instead of ruling over Yugakure, we should be ruling over Otogakure or Konoha by now," he said, anger in his voice as he looked over a map. "My reputation is suffering due to the incompetence of you imbeciles. It's bad enough the Tsuchikage is breathing down my neck along with the rest of those blasted zealots," he said, as it was known he wasn't fond of these followers of Jashin. Of course he never said anything like that out loud. "Kage is getting displeased with their foolishness of opposing us. We have assembled a great army and yet somehow this army can only stand by and be cut down like wheat," he said as he looked out a window. "And where is Lu Xiang at? For all his boasting that he is the mightiest warrior in the land, he hasn't shown himself ever since they attempted to attack us at Iwagakure and he was forced to pull back by 2 brats. It appears that if we are to beat this foolish alliance that is had between Sound, Leaf, and Sand, we are to fight them at their own game." A messenger suddenly entered the room, interrupting him. "Sima-sama, I bring an urgent report," the messenger said, revealing a scroll and kneeling before him. Sima-zun took it and opened it and read it. Slowly a wicked grin grew on his face. "Aha, at last Kumogakure has responded. In exchange for us capturing a Hyuga and giving them the Byakugan they desire, they will obliterate Suna for us and join in an alliance with us," he said as he read the letter from the Raikage himself, as Kage had long been trying to get Cloud to join them. Previous attempts had done nothing to persuade them, but now it seemed like they were willing to work with them. Sima-zun nodded his head, as the Land of Lightning was one of the 5 main lands throughout the world. Earth, Sand, Leaf, and Cloud, 4 of the 5 would now be involved in this war. Cloud, next to the army they had created, was the strongest village military-wise and economically-wise, and according to rumors had 2-tailed beasts sealed in 2 of their elite ninja. The strategist chuckled darkly. "Now then, it is time we deal with the coalition as well." At a secret meeting place, 2 men were seated at a wooden desk looking across at one another. Guards were in the room for each of them to protect them. "Raikage, have you accepted my offering of an alliance?" Kage Sosano said to the dark-skinned muscled man before him. With Kage was Hidan, Zhang Mao, Da Zhao, and several guards including Lu Xiang. I will agree to this, but if only you give us what we want." The Raikage, a powerful man known simply as A, said to him. With him were several guards, although knowing his power it was doubtful he needed them. Among them were 2 others. The first was a woman with cat-like eyes and blonde hair. The other had a laid-back personality and leaned against the wall, and with a pencil and a pad of paper appeared to be jotting down words and singing them to himself. "Of course, you desire the Byakugan. That is what your land has long desired, has it not? I have heard the tales of the ninja during a peace treaty who tried to capture the heiress of the Hyuga clan." A scowled at that. He knew what he was referring to, what happened a near decade ago. "Take off your mask, Tsuchikage. I like to see a man's face before I ally with him or I crush him," he said sternly. The Tsuchikage reached up and removed the metal mask he wore, revealing his face. "Now that we see face to face, I ask again. If we give you a Hyuga who has the Byakugan, will you destroy Suna for us? I have thought it through and the offering is tempting. Cloud has desired the secrets of the Byakugan. And all I am asking in return for that you destroy Suna and murder the Kage. With your power you claim to have, it should be no problem. Or is your claims of power just a bluff to hide your weakness?" he said to him. A scowled at that remark and pressed his hands against the desk, leaving a print on them. Immediately several guards reached towards their weapons. The ninja who was writing a song stopped and turned his attention to the meeting for the first time, interested in what is going on. Lu Xiang grasped his halberd tightly and stepped forward. The Raikage admitted to himself that he was an impressive-looking warrior and glared at the Tsuchikage. "Don't underestimate my power, boy. I am the Raikage and few can match my power. I could crush your head the same way I would crush a stubborn nut," said, warning him. "Brute strength is not the only thing that leads to victory. You should know better than that. A man who is weak physically but skilled in planning can always defeat a more powerful foe. My powers that I have received from Jashin are beyond anything you could hope to imagine," Kage said to him, and his rings glowed faintly as the tension in the room increased. Hidan, watching the scene, was waiting for it to turn into something more interesting than petty words. Glared at him. Just who was this Jashin he and the others kept talking about? He had heard rumors of the Jashin cult but thought them to be babbling fools. True strength in his eyes comes from the body, not the blessing of a fake idol. But come now, we both desire something. I desire the destruction of Suna, while you desire the Byakugan. Surely we can put our differences aside for the moment and achieve what we both want. I won't agree to any treaty or alliance until further notice. I'll fulfill my end of our first deal as long as you do yours. I take my leave right now," he said, and stood up from the table and turned and was joined by his guards and snapped at the lazy one to join up with them. The Tsuchikage watched him leave the room. Impudent fool, his lot are not fit to live in the world Jashin has visioned. Still, there are uses for the likes of him, he said to the others. Yo bro, you really going to work with that man? The Raikage's brother known as Killer Bee said as he walked beside him. The Raikage let out a loud huff. He will be useful, that's for certain, but his kind and these fanatics disgust me. If he gets us the Byakugan, then his use will end in my eyes. If we do manage to get a Hyuga, though, we must make certain it doesn't have the seal the last one had. That body was ruined by it when we tried to figure out their secrets," he said as he and his village long desired the secrets of the Hyuga clan. In return he wants us to wipe out Sunagaku. It's a bit of a high price, do you not think, Raikage? The woman with cat eyes said. Her name was Yugito Ni, and along with Killer Bee was two of the Raikage's most trusted allies and companions. He waved her worry away. Don't fret about it too much, Sand has weakened considerably over the past years. Their current Kage is nothing more than a child, we should have no problem defeating them, said confidently. I don't know about this bro, Killer Bee said. That Jushin or Jishin or whatever guy, he ain't exactly right in the head in my eyes. I couldn't finish this song I was writing due to him. I ignored him. Brother, I don't want you involved in the battle with Suna. Killer Bee turned an annoyed look at him. What you talkin' about, man? What you mean I ain't coming with you guys? I can handle myself against any. You tend to go overboard in battle and ignore any plans of strategy. I don't want you risking our men with your antics. Your idea of a plan is to charge right in sword swinging. It works every time I do it, he said, protesting his decision. The Killer Bee of the Cloud Village always sticks his blade, and the eight-tailed beast will get. Enough with your singing, I want you to stay behind when we leave to face Suna. Just in case anything happens, you'll be there to stop it in an instant. It's your duty to protect it as you're the guardian. Oh sure, this means you get to have all the fun with Sand while I get stuck at home and only thing to do is work on my tan, he said, muttering to himself. The group continued walking, unaware that they were being watched and had been the whole time. Zetsu, the spy of Akatsuki, emerged from the ground, having heard everything. So, Cloud is entering this war now, are they? How intriguing, he said to himself. Pain will be most interested, he said, and then disappeared. At Konoha the next day. Get everything loaded up. Get our supplies and everything ready. You there, hurry with the rest. The Sand Jonin Baki said as the forces of Suna were having to head back to their territory. They had received the word and news that the coalition hadn't wanted to hear. Cloud was planning to ally itself with Earth, which would be disastrous to them if the two joined forces. The word was that they were planning on attacking Suna, so the Sand part of the coalition had to leave and protect their borders. If they fell, then 1/3 of the coalition would be lost, and it would be a devastating blow to them. Get all our men, all our medics, all our scouts, get every last one of them ready. Gaara the Kage said to Baki, who nodded. We need to be at full strength. I've already sent scouts out ahead to Suna to warn Chio and the others to prepare themselves. They left 2 hours ago and were running as if a demon dog was nipping at their heels. His sensei told them. Gaara nodded. He then reached towards his head, suddenly feeling a headache out of nowhere. Damn it, Shukaku, not now. He muttered to himself as he could sense the demon's lust for blood rising. He had been getting better control of him as of late, but now he was starting to irritate him. He soon meet his brother and sister, and they knew how important this was. If Cloud engaged in battle with them, they would need their full strength to defeat them. Going with them was a small force of sound nins led by Kimimaro Kage. Orochimaru giving them to him so they could aid him. Although some scoffed at the lack of numbers, they quickly quieted when they saw Kimimaro's prowess in battle. The Kage was worth over 100 men, so Orochimaru had said. We are ready, Kage, Baki said to him, and Gaara nodded. Soon afterwards, the Sand Nins left Konoha to head back to Suna and prepare it in case of the attack by Cloud. Naruto Uzumaki watched the large force go as he was seated on the carved faces of the past Hokages, watching Gaara and them leave to defend their own territory. He looked around and knew that his brother was out there. Haku had left earlier in the day with a force to ambush the forces of Iwa near the borders of Konoha and Suna. The feminine boy had left along with others, and Naruto had hoped he would have been a part of it, but he wasn't able to get there in time and had to see his sworn brother leave. One of the few times they would be separated. But given their recent success, there was little doubt in his mind that they would return with talk of another victory of ambushing them and cutting them apart. He knew Haku's skill, the boy as strong as he was, and knew that Haku would be safe from any problems that would befall them. The only thing he could do was wait for their return. Elsewhere, a force from Iwa numbering 15 was marching, and they were flanking a group of wagons filled with supplies being drawn by horses. They were near the borders of Suna and Konoha and near an important river. That had been a dispute between them years ago until they finally decided how to split it evenly. Currently they were on the Konoha side of it. They marched nervously and looked around the road as if expecting an ambush at any moment. Hey, this is gonna be too easy. Enko Mitarashi said as she looked through a telescope. We can hit them fast and hard and take their goods before they even know we're there. She said, a confident grin on her face. They risk much with their small numbers to protect 4 wagons. We outnumber them 3-1. Kakashi said as they looked at the scene through a telescope. With them was Haku, his sword strapped to his back, and Sasuke Uchiha. The nearest base they have is half a day's journey. It's like they are asking for us to attack them. Haku said, looking at them. Well then, let's make this quick then. Sasuke said. We can hit them about a mile from here where we can hide and wait to ambush them. Kakashi said, and they went to alert the others. A half-hour later, the small force and their wagons were surprised to see in the middle of the road a man with gray-silver hair and a mask covering his mouth and his Hitai-8, which covered one of his eyes, standing in front of them and blocking their view. This road is closed, fine sirs. You'll have to turn back now. The leader of the group scowled under his mask and drew out his blade. Archers, aim, he ordered, and 3 of them pulled back on their bows and notched an arrow. Kakashi shrugged and brought a hand up and mimicked a call of an owl. As if on instant, appearing out of the high grass and nearby trees were 44 other ninjas, half of them leaf and the other half sound, and aiming their weapons at them. The choice is yours, either leave the wagons and head back now. Or we'll have to find a burial place for you. Kakashi said as they surrounded them. Unaware to Kakashi or them, they were being watched from up a hill by Muda Daidoji on horseback along with 40 others. He smirked when he saw them as they had walked right into their trap. Drawing his sword, he then gave the order to charge and kicked his horse into a run. I'm giving you a final chance, leave now or die. Kakashi said to the man when he suddenly heard rumbling. His eye widened and he turned his head and saw charging down the cliff 40 horsemen and coming at them fast. Damn, throw weapons, he shouted, and many of them threw their kunai and shuriken at the ones with the wagons and hit them. Retreat, he then ordered as they had to get out of here fast. After throwing their aerial weapons, they quickly did so. A few of the survivors fired their bows and 2 of them got hit in the back and fell down. Muda gave the order to pursue and cut down one of the stragglers as they gave chase. The leaf and sound nins ran as fast as their feet carried them, but the horses they rode were bred for running and soon come upon them. Many got stabbed from behind by the spears or were shot down by arrows. Kakashi ducked a swing at his head and getting it, a kunai saw one charging at him with his sword and waited for the right moment and then leapt up and threw the kunai and got him in the skull, knocking him off his horse and to the ground dead. Damn it. Kuchio's no jutsu. Enko shouted as they were being overrun and summoned several snakes which wrapped around the legs of the horses and tripped them up and caused them to fall and dislodge their rider, as well as it put them on equal footing and making the fight more fairer. Sasuke activated his Sharingan and reading their movements ducked and countered their attacks. The Uchiha drew out his long sword and impaled one with it and smirked when he saw him collapse and die. He drew it out of the body and deflected an attack. The battle was on, and they were evenly matched as bodies fell to the ground dead. The small battle already claiming over 24 lives and it appeared to be getting more. Haku activated his bloodline and threw shurikens made of ice at them. It was too crowded for him to do his mirror move as he would risk trapping his comrades, so he had to resort in using his Zanbato and other weapons. Suddenly he heard a horse behind him and turned and saw someone preparing to behead. Quickly he ducked and saw the person turn his horse around and came at him again. He deflected his attempt this time and the man turned and kicked it into another run. Haku was ready for him this time and instead of attacking him he instead attacked his saddle, cutting the ropes holding it with an expert cut. The cut caused the saddle to lose control and the man was unable to regain control of the animal and fell off and landed on his feet and drew out his Nodashi. Muda came at him and slashed at him and Haku blocked it with his blade. Muda swung at him and he again avoided it. He ducked a slash at him and Haku parried and slashed at him and Muda avoided it. Haku recognized him behind the mask he wore as his brother's enemy and the one who killed Kidomaru and attacked the Shaolin Temple. His eyes narrowed as he would make him pay for all that he's done. He came at him and drove him back. The two engaged in a personal battle between them. You are good, I will admit that. Muda said to him as they were in a test of strength. But I've a destiny that will be stopped by the likes of you. He said as he overpowered him and the two backed up as they fought with Muda having the advantage for the moment. Haku blocked his attacks and regained the offensive wielding his master's weapon. For all that this ninja had done and the pain he inflicted on his brother and others he would pay for his life. Haku swung the blade at him and Muda blocked and kicked him in the side. Haku ignored the blow and delivered a punch to his face, knocking him backwards but quickly recovering. Haku came at him, not backing down as the two fought and were soon nearing the edge of the field. Below them was a 20-foot drop into the water below. Haku was currently in command and slashed at him. Muda dodged backwards and narrowly avoided having his abdomen sliced wide open. He countered with a slice and Haku avoided it, although it hit the mask he wore and it came off, revealing his face to him, and saw he had him near the edge of it. He did an overhead swing planning on cutting him in half. Muda saw it coming and smirked and avoiding it leapt right over him in a flip, putting him right behind him. He then went to run him through from behind. Only for Haku, perhaps relying entirely on instinct, to bring his sword back thanks to the quickness of the bracers he wore and deflect it, much to Muda's shock. Haku brought it upwards and sent the Nodashi upwards and then turned and sliced at him and realized he landed a hit at his ribcage area when he heard him take an intake of breath. It wasn't a full hit, but he knew he had dealt damage to him. Not far away, Sasuke and the others was finishing the rest of them up and saw the battle at hand between them. Seeing a golden opportunity, he made his way and activated his Sharingan, waiting for the perfect chance to take down the swordsman and show his abilities to all. Muda reached towards his wounded ribcage as, although it was a minor hit, he realized that it could have been fatal if it hit fully. Haku slashed at him and he blocked it and suddenly reached towards his throat area. A green mist-like substance spewed out of his mouth coming at him. But Haku was ready for it and summoned a block of it to take the mist for him, much to his surprise as he didn't expect them to block it. Suddenly, he heard a loud chirping noise right behind him and sensed a threat and turned around and his eyes widened at what he saw. Sasuke, his arm covered in electricity and his Sharingan fully activated, charged him as he attacked him. "Chidori!" he shouted and thrusted the attack forward, and he saw him coming. Knowing he could not survive an attack such as that at such range, he quickly moved out of the just in the nick of time, much to Sasuke's surprise as he was aiming now right at Haku. Haku saw it and couldn't find a place to move as he was at the edge, nor did he have time to cast a protection jutsu, and the only thing he could try and do was move his side. The attack hit him in the side of the ribs, much to Sasuke's shock and disbelief at what he had just done. He hadn't hit him fully but still damaged him. "Sasuke!" Kakashi shouted as he saw what just happened. Haku reached towards his side and slowly losing control of his footing fell backwards, his weapon in hand. Off the edge and down into the water below. Sasuke could only look on, unable to do a thing as he saw him fall into the raging river. Muta, seeing his men being beaten, quickly did a jutsu and disappeared, leaving the battlefield. Sasuke, Sasuke! Kakashi shouted and ran towards him. What just happened? What just happened? He shouted as he looked at him. Sasuke was unable to say anything as he was in disbelief at what he had just done. Kakashi looked past the cliff, a look of sadness on his face. Where's Haku at? Anko asked him, the woman with a cut on her arm and refusing to tend to it. Where's he at? She asked again, not sure what was up with the silence between them. Kakashi looked at her sadly and picked up the mask Haku wore, and that was enough for her to realize what happened. Get the wounded tended to, we got to head back to Konoha as soon as possible. He said and walked past her and mentioned for Sasuke to move as well. Later that day, Naruto knew something was up the moment he heard the group Haku had went with had returned. A gut feeling told him something was wrong. He quickly made his way to where they was at and saw that only half of them had returned and they had lost nearly 24. Concern immediately went for his brother. Haku, Haku, where you at? Haku, he shouted and made his way forward. He noticed the looks on their faces and he feared the worst. Sasuke, he said, seeing the Uchiha who looked at him, and Naruto thought he looked horrible. What happened? Where's Haku? He asked him. Sasuke was unable to say anything and Naruto wondered what was up with him. Naruto, a voice said, and he turned and saw Kakashi and he held something in his arms. Kakashi walked to him and prepared himself for one of the toughest things he would ever do. He held out the item and Naruto took it and his eyes widened in horror and disbelief when he saw what it was. Haku, Haku didn't make it, I'm sorry. I know you thought of him as a brother but he fell. Kakashi said to him, breaking the news to him. Shock went throughout Naruto's body as he held the mask that Haku wore on missions and in battle. His brother was gone. He had fallen in battle. But we swore to stop the chaos, he said as he held the mask to his chest. We made an oath of brotherhood, this can't be happening, it just can't be. He said as all eyes were on him and many gave him looks of pity. We promised that if the day we died it would be on the same year and the same day and at the same time. He was the one closest to me. Kakashi reached over to comfort him. I'm sorry Naruto, he was suddenly batted away. We made a promise. Naruto said and his eyes turned red. We swore we would always be together. We made an oath at the Peach Garden. His anger was starting to raise at the thought of his brother dead. He was my best friend, he was my brother. Haku, he shouted and fell to his knees and pounded the ground with all of his might. He raised them up again and slammed them down onto the ground as Kyuubi's power flowed through him. Again and again he did it. It wasn't fair. Haku was his sworn brother. They promised they would save the land from chaos together. Everyone looked around, looks of sadness on their faces as they knew how much the two sworn brothers valued one another. Naruto gave a mighty slam to the ground and then turned and raised his head to the heavens and let out a great scream filled with the agony and pain he had suffered. Hack you. Later that night, near where the main Suna force was resting for the night, a pair of scouts had been set out to report anything unusual. They were past the borders of Konoha and soon in their territory and near the river that was important to them to have, as water could be a scarce treasure in the desert. The two scouts were doing their job when one of them saw something. Hey, what's that? One of them shouted as he saw something near the river. What's what? His companion asked him. I see something washed up near the river, come on, let's see what it is. He said, and the two carefully made their way. The two were shocked at what they saw. It was a body. It's not one of ours, that's for certain. One said as they carefully approached the body. It's probably already dead, I hope she doesn't mind if I take that nice sword she's got. We can bury her somewhere nearby, let's head back to the camp. The second one said, looking over it with little detail. His companion disagreed and examined the body. This one's a he, and he's still alive. What, are you certain? The Suna scout asked him. Yeah, he's badly hurt though, by the look of it he must have taken a nasty blow to the side, who knows how long he was in the water also. He doesn't have much longer though. He said and went to his pack and produced some blankets to cover the body. Go tell the Kage we found a body and he's badly hurt and needs a medic. Go on. He shouted at him and he nodded and quickly headed back to the main camp. A few minutes later Gaara saw the body and recognized it. Have my best medic tend to his wounds, and put him in my tent. He ordered and the scouts nodded and carefully picked the body up, careful not to do any harm to him. I want to speak to him personally when he wakes up. Chapter 68. He couldn't figure out where he was, the son of the snake, Naruto Uzumaki. He didn't know where he was at. He found himself in a different place as he didn't know what to make of it. Blackness surrounded him and he could barely see in front of his face. Suddenly he sensed something behind him. He turned and saw an ominous figure cloaked in shadows and full of malice and power. A pair of dark red eyes stared at him as he was an imposing figure. The darkness it seemed was under his command as he controlled it and it did whatever he wanted it to do as the room turned pitch black. Naruto did not know what to think of this monstrosity before him as it seemed as if he was evil having taken the form of human flesh. The man took a step and his footsteps echoed across the room. Naruto looked past him and saw to his shock what appeared to be the ruins of a city filled with corpses and destruction. He looked everywhere and saw little more than destruction. Banners were placed on the ruins and Naruto recognized the symbol on them. The symbol of Jashin. Naruto also recognized 8 rings on the man's fingers. He knew those rings anywhere and he saw the man who appeared to be unaware of his presence raise his hand and fired a beam of energy at one of the few buildings left and destroyed it. He then destroyed more buildings and places, destroying everything in his sight and letting out a dark laugh as he enjoyed the destruction he was bringing. Naruto found himself unable to do anything but watch as he witnessed the destruction. This monster was a bringer of chaos and death. The aura of darkness he had felt as if it was poisonous and filled the air around him. But then Naruto noticed a small light out of the corner of his eye illuminating. A white light, and this one was different than he had. It felt more peaceful and suddenly the sound of music was heard. It sounded beautiful and unlike anything Naruto had ever heard. The dark man heard it as well and he turned his attention to the small speck of light that opposed him. He sent his shadows to consume it but Naruto saw to his surprise the light dispelling them and it stepping forward. The light stepped forward and Naruto saw faintly in the light the outline of a man playing an ocarina in it. The light stood before the dark man who glared at him playing his music. You dare oppose me, Jashin, the ruler of this world and all that I survey. I have destroyed countless civilizations and countries. You think you can stop me by yourself? The man stopped playing his instrument and opened his eyes. For too long you have fed on the suffering and misery of others. You have stolen everything from the people that they hold precious and dear. But no more, it ends now, he said to him. Ignorant priest, I kill who I want, all living things are playthings to me. He said and fired all of his rings at him. To his shock they did not do any damage to him and he was in disbelief. What? Suddenly the white light engulfed the entire area dispelling the darkness much to the dark man's shock as he was covered in the holy light and it seemed to hurt him. Naruto watched in disbelief at what had just happened and saw that the man took up the sword he had and charged him and let out a battle cry. Naruto saw the man bring up his arms to try to defend himself as the blade made contact and he let out a cry. Naruto suddenly found himself back in his room, in his bed, at ZODIVK. He looked around and noticed nothing out of the ordinary. Just a dream, he whispered to himself quietly and slowly got out of the bed and got dressed. Just a dream, that's all it was. 2 days had passed, 2 awful long days ever since the tragedy had happened. On a drawer with his clothes was a mask, his brother's mask. Haku's mask, who had fallen in battle. He was sent back to ZODIVK, declared unfit physically or mentally to be involved in what they were doing. And to be honest, he didn't care what the coalition was doing. It didn't matter to him anymore. He heard a knock on his door and he turned his head and saw it opened and a red-headed girl stepped in. Hey, how you feeling? Yuya asked him and he didn't respond. You haven't spoken a word ever since, what happened Naruto? She said as she looked at her teammate, the only one she had now. Naruto looked at her. He hadn't spoken to anyone ever since the loss. I know how much Haku meant to you Naruto. He was a friend of mine as well. But you can't stay here for the rest of your life. Naruto's lack of response was her answer. She knew he was hurting after learning he had died, falling in battle in an accident in a misfire caused by Sasuke that resulted in his sworn brother's fall. Come on, you need to get out of here and get some air at least. She said and led him out of the room. The two walked throughout the streets of ZODIVK and Naruto noticed many of the looks of pity he was getting from the villagers and fellow ninjas. No amount of pity or sympathy though would heal the wound in his heart though. As they were walking, Naruto saw. To his surprise, Team 7, their backs were turned to him, unaware he was there. For a moment he saw his former sensei's back stiffened as he sensed his approach. Naruto's eyes narrowed when he saw the clan symbol of the Uchiha clan on the back of Sasuke. "Say," he called out to them, and Sakura and Sasuke turned to look at him in surprise. "How's everything going, with the plans and all that?" he asked, the first time people had heard him speak in days. "Fine, so far there have been no signs of the Iwa or Jashinists, although there have been reports of Cloud making a move towards Suna." Kakashi said, his back to him, still unable to look at the boy who he had broken the news about Haku's demise. "Huh, is that so?" Naruto said and looked at them. Sakura looked at the boy and wanted to say something but couldn't find anything to say. She had saw his reaction back in Konoha when he learned the news about what happened. Sasuke also hadn't said a thing about the matter as well also. "Naruto," Sasuke said to him, "I didn't mean to cause what happened, he just got in." Sasuke was suddenly interrupted when Naruto appeared in front of him and grabbed him by the front of his shirt and lifted him in the air with both hands. Everyone looked on in shock at what Naruto had just done. "I hate you, you know that, Sasuke. I can't stand you. How feel nothing at all about what others go through," Naruto said to him, his body shaking with rage, their faces inches apart. "You're cold as ice, aren't you? This war doesn't concern you, power is the only thing you care about. Well, it's because of you and your obsession for power that Haku is dead," he said, and then dropped him. "You don't care about what happens to real people and the pain they go through. As long as you avenge that lousy clan of yours, the world can go to hell for all you care," he said bitterly to him. "I know people were going to die in this war, and there was a good chance me or him could have died. And we were ready to face Iwa and stop them after we had sworn our oath," he said, and his voice was broken, filled with sadness and pain. "I know why you desire power, but does that mean you have to be so damn uncaring about the pain others go through just so you can get that stupid power?" he shouted at him. Sasuke didn't respond to his words. Sakura was quiet as well, the medic in training speechless at his display. "I know the loss places a heavy burden on your soul, Naruto," Kakashi said to him. "I don't need you to tell me something like that," Naruto said to him. Kakashi looked at his former student and knew exactly what Naruto was going through. He had carried the same burden when Obito died. "I have lost my brother, we swore we would walk together. He was the one closest to me, the one who mattered most to me. Listen, all of you. We're going to win this war. We're going to stop the pain and suffering that's being spread," Naruto said as he looked at them all. "No one's going to give up the fight, just don't screw things up," he said, and turned and walked away from them. "Naruto, I know the pain that you are going through is great, but you must remain strong. If you don't, then everyone that has sacrificed their lives would have done so in vain," Kakashi said to himself as he watched him go. Elsewhere in a hideout, the leader of Akatsuki listened to Zetsu's report telling him what was going on with Cloud. HMPH, so Cloud has made their move and is set for a battle with Suna. No doubt many lives will be lost cause of the foolish raikage. And the two-tailed cat vessel is going to be there as well, he asked the plant-like ninja as he sat on his throne. "I believe so, Pain-sama," Zetsu said to him, kneeling. "Then it is time we make our move. We have been in the shadows for quite some time now. Contact Deidara, Sasori, and Itachi. I have a mission for the three of them that involves the cat Jinchuriki," he said to him, and the half-black half-white missing nin bowed and left. Pain rubbed his hands together. It was finally time for them to make their move, and it had come at an opportune time to capture one of the tailed beasts. "I don't like the thought of me not coming with you, bro," the eight-tailed vessel Killerbee said to his brother the Raikage as they stood outside the gates of Cloud overlooking the sizable force that he was taking. "I should accompany you and be there to protect you." A waved him away and smirked. "Don't concern yourself, B, I have Yugito coming with me. You and her are my right and left hand that protect me, and the left is just as dangerous as the right. Bringing you with us would be overkill. I still don't like this, you're being to be in their territory and their terrain where they'll have the advantage, man," he said as Yugito walked towards them. "We are ready to move out at your command, Raikage-sama," she said to them, and nodded. "I'll be there in a minute," Whilst I'm gone I expect you to take care of the defense of the land and the village. I'll return shortly with news of our victory," he said and patted his brother on the arm and went to join up with Yugito. Killer Bee watched him go, a frown on his face. Although he was lazy at times, when it came to his brother he was all serious. He didn't like the fact that his brother was going on without him. The man was stubborn and full of pride, which he knew about. He watched as the force left and saw his brother turn and wave to him, and he raised his hand back. He then turned to the ones that were left to stay behind and manage the defense. "Get to work on the defense," he barked at them, and they scrambled. "I don't want anyone that's one of clouds within a mile of here. Get to work," he said as he gave orders to them all. Elsewhere, a pair of eyes opened and the figure closed and reopened them as he found himself in an unusual place. He was in a room, in a bed covered by a sheet. He glanced around wondering where he was and how he got here. The last thing he remembered was being hit in the side and falling down off the edge and into the water. He realized that his clothes were gone, and so were his items, as he wore nothing except for a pair of trousers that covered him. He looked at his side and noticed that it was covered with bandages. "So I survived," Haku said to himself as he got out of the bed and looked around. There was no windows in the room and a door. He wondered where he was and how he got here. "You're finally awake," a voice said, and he turned and saw standing in the doorway the cage of Suna Gaara, and with him was an elderly woman. "Gaara," Haku said as he looked at him. "My men found you when we were setting up camp 2 days ago, preparing to head back to Suna. They was fortunate, as you would have died if they hadn't found you when they did. My medic tended to you and stabilized the wound, and I had you brought to Suna where Chio healed the rest of the wound. It was touch and go from there on, as you've been out for the past 2 days. He said and mentioned to the elderly woman. Haku remembered faintly what happened. He was facing Muta after they had been ambushed and had been pushed to the edge when Sasuke appeared and accidentally hit him with his move, sending him into the water. He must have been there for hours and he did not know how he survived. A blessing from the gods, it looked like. He looked at his side where the bandages were. He removed them as he felt a lot better and noticed that there was a scar there now. That scar will remain there, it was beyond my ability to remove. You was fortunate that I was able to heal you and that you didn't get hit in the chest area. It would have been no use to attempt to heal you if you had been hit there. Chio said to him. Haku nodded at her words and looked at Gaara. It appears that I am in your debt for you saving my life, Kage. Gaara looked at him. Your clothes and gear will be brought to you soon. Get dressed and meet me outside, he said, and he and Chio left the room. After getting his equipment and clothing back and putting them back on and strapping his sword to his back, Haku exited the room and headed outside of the hospital. He adjusted himself to the sun as it was bearing down on them. He remembered now back when he traveled to here with Orochimaru just how hot this place could get. Much warmer than Odo or Konoha was. He looked around and noticed a couple of sound nins and spotted Kimimaro there. Everything appeared to be in a sense of urgency. As you can see, we are facing a very large problem, said a voice, and he turned and saw Baki. Word has reached us that Cloud is assembling a large force and is planning to attack as soon as they agree to an alliance with Iwagakure, he said with a spat. We're not sure how we are going to deal with this, as Gaara is preparing to head into a meeting to discuss what the plan is. Haku looked at the man and could sense concern in his voice. Oto Nin, it is best you get out of here while you still can. Your wounds haven't fully healed and I doubt you will be much use. Head back to Oto or Konoha or wherever, as before long this whole place will be a battlefield. Haku stared at the man. Although he wasn't exactly 100%, he knew that he could not just leave. I have a debt to repay before I can reunite myself with my brother Suna Nin, he said to him. Gaara saved my life, and what kind of person would I be if I left without repaying the debt I owe him? Where is the Kage? He asked him. Baki told him where Gaara was going to be at, and Haku quickly made his way. Gaara, he called out, and the Kage turned and saw him. Let me fight for you and repay my debt that I owe you. You wish to fight in this upcoming battle? The sand vessel asked him, and he nodded. I can't just leave here, it goes against everything in my body. I owe you and I'm in your debt. Please, let me fight for you and repay my debt, he said, unsheathed his sword and laid it in front of him and kneeled. My body and my weapon is for yours to command until my debt is repaid. Gaara looked at him, a bit surprised at his actions and his devotion to paying off the debt which Gaara hadn't concerned himself with. Very well, You can fight for me in this battle. Although I can't guarantee your survival. Haku nodded and stood up. Sorry Naruto, just wait a little longer and I shall return to you my brother. The two went inside the room where the meeting began. They discussed over the plan and how they were going to confront Cloud, who reports were filing and that they were marching. Many elite sand nins as well as his siblings were there. Kimimaro was there to represent the sound nins. One thing we can agree on, that the battle cannot take place here, we endanger the civilians' lives if we do so. The battlefield will have to be at a place of our choosing. Gaara said as he listened to the council and the opinions of them all. Kage, with all due respect, do you actually believe we can win? A councilman spoke up. Our strength has weakened over the years due to budget cuts, perhaps if we surrender we'll be. Reports are saying that they have agreed to destroy us under the orders of the Tsuchikage. If we surrendered they will still kill us, only they'll have a much easier time doing so. Gaara interrupted him and the man quieted down. We have to choose. When and where this battle is going to be fought, it will have to be at a place where we will have the advantage in the terrain. Baki said and then thought it over. I suggest we move to Yamatai Pass and let that be the place where the battle is fought. Many looks came at him. Think about it, that place is a mountainous terrain and if we fought there we would have the advantage, as there is no easy way up it with its twists and turns and the ways that can be easily guarded. The third Kage constructed the base there before his untimely disappearance and it showed to be well defended. If we forced Cloud to fight us there, our chances of winning increased dramatically. The landscape would be to our advantage and it would take many to scale its walls. We'll be able to have the advantage there. Several people looked at him. That is correct Baki, the way to the gates of the base will force them to come at us and there are defensive garrisons and posts there as well which we can defend. Gaara said, agreeing with him. Cloud would have to plan carefully if they are to take it down. So it appears that that is our choice then. Yamatai shall be the place where the battle is fought and decided at. We must move quickly though if we are to force them to fight us there. Baki said and many nodded in agreement with his suggestion. Very well then, I want every ninja we got to be prepared to move out and head to the fort at Yamatai in 6 hours, that shall be the deciding ground and they shall have to face us there. Get our supplies and everything else ready to transport there. Gaara ordered and they bowed and immediately left the room to make preparations. Later that day everything had been gathered and readied and they began the trek to Yamatai Pass, which housed the base that the third Kage had made. The place was said to have been partly built by his Kekai Genkai that he possessed. They quickly fixed it up and set everything ready, fixing the garrisons, installing ballistas, and other things as they got there first and had the high ground of the rocky terrain that made it difficult at times to travel. This would be a key element in the fight as Cloud would struggle to find places where they could walk and travel to, as the one road that was lead to the base was up a high hill and if they went there they would be easy to cut down from afar with arrows and long-range attacks. A day had passed when scouts came in and reported with news. So they have taken the bait then, Gaara said as reports came in with Cloud bringing their force to fight them here. The Raikage was leading his men to battle and we're going to face them here at their terms. Haku looked outside as it was getting dark and the reports where they would be here in a few hours. This was it was time to make a stand. Everyone. Gaara ordered as he commanded the attention of them all. Prepare for battle as come daybreak the Raikage and Cloud shall be on our doorstep snarling like a pack of hungry wolves ready to come in and wipe us out. But these dogs who have decided to serve under the Tsuchikage and take his scraps from his table will not find themselves able to fit in and destroy us, as here is where we make our stand and show them the might of Suna and its ninjas. Tomorrow the battle of Yamatai which will decide all our fates shall begin. He said and they gave a great cry as they stood ready to face their foes. Chapter 69. It was morning and the sun was shining down on the fortress of Yamatai where the Kage and the ninjas of the Land of Wind waited. It was here where the battle would be decided. The ancient place had been constructed by the third Kage shortly before his disappearance years ago and it was rumored he used his bloodline to build and strengthen it. Everyone was on guard, they knew that the enemy was out there and was no doubt watching them. Here was where they would make their stand against the onslaught of Cloud, who had formed a loose alliance with Earth. Gaara stared out into the rocky terrain as there was no visible sign of them yet. His siblings, Temari and Kankuro, stood next to him watching their younger brother. They're close, he said to them. I can feel it in the wind and sand, they have set up their main camp not far from here. He said out loud, and the two nodded as the defenses were being put up and the iron gate was being reinforced, as that was the only entrance into the place. Ballistas were set up which could fire arrows at a great distance as well. Garrisons were set up as well to serve as defense up ahead. Some of the Sunanins were eating breakfast and they had to ration their supplies, fortunately though they had brought enough to last them several days. Hunger was one foe you did not want to face in battle, as it was one you cannot win against. Haku watched the scene unfold, as so far there had been little visible sign of them, but they were out there, they was just waiting for a chance to strike. He wiped a bit of sweat off his brow and glanced up at the hot sun. No doubt everyone would be sweating heavily before the day was done. Elsewhere, at the main camp of Cloud several hundred feet away, he looked over a map of the region in his tent. HMPH, that base of theirs is strong, no doubt about it. But I do not doubt that it shall fall soon, he said as he was seated in his chair. The terrain here is rough and hard to scale, Raikage-sama, Yugito said to him as her and several high-ranking Cloud Nins were in the tent. We'll be at a distinct disadvantage trying to capture it. It'll be hard sending a force to capture it, as the land here is difficult to maneuver, as we'll be in their sights and they have already set up their defenses. I nodded at her and brought a muscular hand to his chin. I know, well, it makes things more difficult, but no matter. I want to test their defenses and see how strong they are before we try to take it. They might be hiding under the illusion of strength to intimidate us. A key factor here will be capturing their garrisons. If we cut off their access to the garrisons and capture them for our own, we'll force them back into a wall, and how long can they hold out for? Yamatai may be strong, but it's not impenetrable. If we are unable to break through, we can crush their spirits by surrounding them and keeping any reinforcements from coming, and make them consider surrendering, as a lack of food will defeat any man. He said as he knew firsthand from previous wars what to expect. Unknown to the Raikage or Yugito was that one of the ninjas of Cloud was not what he appeared to be. Although he looked like an ordinary human, his skin was actually made of wood, and inside of him he had a radio recording all the information going on. That was being heard a distance away by 3 others listening to the other radio. The puppet giving them information. So, it appears they will soon strike. Sasori said in his strange outfit said to the other 2. We'll have to make our move soon. Deidara the bomb specialist and his rival in art smirked. I don't know about you guys, but this should be fun. I'm hoping for some good seats while we watch the action, maybe we can join in for a while. We're not here to have fun, Deidara, the scorpion of the Red Sands, chastised him. We're here on a mission. Originally the traitor was supposed to capture the cat vessel, but since he abandoned us, we're burdened with his task. He said bitterly, referring to the traitor of Jashin Hidan. The leader of Akatsuki had assigned the 3. The task after learning of what Cloud was planning. Well, we also have to get the Tanuki vessel as well, his blonde counterpart said as they listened to what was going on, hearing the Raikage and others who was oblivious to the fact they were being spied on. That Raikage is all bronze, no brain. Maybe for fun I can send him a present. He'll get a bang when he discovers what's inside. Deidara said with a laugh and revealed the mouths on his hand. Our orders were clear, Deidara, the 3rd member of the group said, and the blonde frowned at the Uchiha whose eyes were closed. Or to capture the cat vessel and the Tanuki vessel as well if we can, and make sure that neither of them suffer a severe and fatal injury. We are to remain in the shadows and strike at the opportune moment. Deidara glared at the Uchiha. Itachi was the one who had forced him to join up with Akatsuki a couple years ago and blew things up for no reason other than to have a bang. He had found himself no match for his Sharingan eyes. He heavily disliked the Uchiha, although he didn't show it to his face, as he had been training himself ever since their first encounter to fight him again one day. Itachi looked at the 2. We need to wait first, to check and make sure everything goes according to plan. Sasori let out a frustrated sigh. He hated waiting. So we are to watch and wait until an opportune moment arises. That could take days. We could be waiting until one of them has the advantage and has decimated the other. It'd be worth it. We have 4 of the tailed beasts, we are just shy of halfway there. We cannot risk one of the 2 dying in this battle. If either one of them does, then all our plans are ruined. Yeah, we got ya. Deidara said and waved his warning away as the 3 watched the events that would unfold. Meanwhile, at one of the garrisons, Kimimaro Kage was with the group of sound nins that had come with them, looking over the defenses when a voice cried out. We got company. A man shouted from a watchtower. Kimimaro quickly moved to the gate and saw what was happening. A small force of cloud nins, numbering perhaps 30, were moving around and in viewing distance of the garrison. They are testing us, checking to see if we have any holes in the defense they can exploit. Baki mused as he stood beside him. He then saw Kimimaro start to head out. What are you doing? He asked him. We should do the same, he said and mentioned to the sound nins. Let's go. And he went out to the terrain away from the safety of the garrison. Baki shook his head, he was being too rash in his eyes. Keep those ballistas ready if any gets too close and fire on my command. He ordered the sand nins and watched Kimimaro head towards the cloud nins. The group of sound nins led by the Kage were making their way across the flatland of the area when one of them heard something with his advanced hearing. Instantly the sound nin turned and did hand symbols and fired a jutsu at what appeared to be a rock. The large rock shattered and revealed 3 cloud nins. Immediately they tried to run away, but Kimimaro was the quicker and leapt up high into the air and fired his fingernails, hitting 2 in the back and killing them. Suddenly the force of cloud nins fired jutsus of their own, and one of them, a lightning-based jutsu, hit him in the shoulder. Ignoring the pain, he gave the order to attack, and the sound nins obliged and did jutsus of their own. A few from both sides were hit directly, knocking them down and out of the fight as the battle between the 2 groups was on. Kimimaro, the lone survivor, moved expertly and beautiful as if his attacks were a dance. No jutsu or kunai came close to touching him as he pulled out bones out of his shoulders and they became swords. His dance was spectacular to watch from afar but fatal to those up close. His movements were like a blur, each move flawless as he did them. Some who were far back and out of range of his attacks could only watch in disbelief at his movements. Kimimaro saw a flurry of shuriken and kunai fly at him, and without batting an eye brought his bone sword up and deflected them easily, with none even coming close to touching him. His movements inspired the sound nins and they fought as well, not wanting to be upstaged by him and show their might as well. Kimimaro ducked a sword swing and impaled his foe, and they were overwhelming them, and many were starting to retreat, taking the wounded back with them, not wanting anything to do with him or his Keke Genkai. He smirked as he watched when he suddenly reached towards his chest and let out a gasp of pain and fell to one knee. An enemy hadn't touched, it was something worse. And no, not now, he said to himself as he was having an attack from the disease that was in his body. It had mostly been cured by Orochimaru and Kabuto, but he still had occasionally attacks such as this that sapped him of his strength and damaged his body. And he didn't have his medicine with him either as he left it back at the garrison. He tried to pull himself up when started coughing and spat up blood. One of the few cloud nins left saw this, and not knowing what to make of this but seeing a chance prepared an A-class jutsu to kill him. Kimimaro saw him and cursed, knowing he couldn't move in his state. The others were too busy to take notice of what had happened to him. The cloud nin got ready to cast the jutsu when he was suddenly impaled with a giant arrow sticking into his body. The ninja fell to the ground dead, unable to cast it in time, and his face a look of shock at what just happened. Kimimaro examined the arrow and saw that it had been fired from a long distance. Weakly turning his head, he saw Baki at the garrison watchtower who had fired the ballista. The cloth-faced man nodded at him, and Kimimaro nodded as well in gratitude to him as he was tended to by the others and led back to the garrison along with the wounded. The dead would have to be left behind, as there would be no time to bury them. After getting back, he quickly headed towards his pack he brought with him and searched and found a purple bottle. Uncorking the lid, he quickly took a swallow and grimaced as he felt the pain in his body leaving. Baki looked at him and ignored the cheering that the others were having due to the small victory. "You okay?" he asked, and Kimimaro put the cork back on and put the bottle back in with other similar bottles containing the medicine he needed to take. "Hi, I'll be fine now," he said and stood up straight and wiped the remains of blood off his lips. Baki looked at him and then ordered the sand and sound nins to knock off their cheering as they had won nothing and that this was nothing more than a test and the real battle would soon start. Later at the main camp of the Raikage. They are formidable Raikage-sama. A cloud nin whose wounds were being tended to by a medic and was lying on a cot said to the ruler of Cloud. "One has skills that I can't believe, as if he said loudly and clenched his teeth as he had a deep wound in his abdomen. A looked at him, although he cared little at times and was said to be a bully at times. He in truth deeply cared about his men and the ones he held close to him. "Easy, don't strain your wounds and just rest yourself. C will tend to your wounds as if he was tending to me," he said to the blonde-haired medic who nodded. It appears that it may not be as weak as you think, Raikage-sama. Yugito said to him, and he looked at her. By the description one gave us, one of them sounded like a member of the warlike Kage clan. I looked at her, a small look of surprise in his eyes. A Kage, but they were thought to have been exterminated nearly a decade ago. How did Sand manage to get their hands on one of them? He himself never really believed the rumors about the war clan, but they said that one full-grown Kage was worth nearly 100 men in battle. Watching on, two Cloud Nins scowled. Those blasted sand rats, they think they can cut down our friends and comrades and not expect payback. One said and grasped his pole axe that he had. That's right, Raikage-sama, we must teach them to fear the power that we have and have our vengeance. The other said as the two were large and had brown skin, and the one on the right had red hair and the one on the left had white hair. Each weared a strap-on flak jacket as well. Calm yourself, Yugito said to the two as she could tell they were ready to charge right into the battlefield. We need to know our enemy first. Until then a reckless charge will cause us damage. Dai, you need to learn to control those tempers you both possess. She said to the two as they were high-ranking Cloud Nins but also had short tempers that could trigger in a notice. She is right, now we can't attack yet. But we will before the moon is in the twilight of its phase. Raikage said and turned to face them. Yugito, prepare the men, tonight an assault will be made on the garrisons and Yamatai. Sand shall know that we mean business. He said, his face turning into one of stern determination. At Yamatai, Gaara was in a meeting with his advisors and strategists. The force they have assembled is large according to our scouts' reports, and in a head-on battle we would stand little chance against them, Kage-sama. Baki said, reporting to him after giving details about what happened at the garrison. They have gathered both numbers and skilled warriors to oppose us. Defeating them would be a great burden. Gaara said as he looked over a crude outline of the region where they and the forces of Cloud were at. True but not impossible, Kage. Chio said, and everyone in the room looked at the elder woman. They have numbers, but know this, an army is the same as a beast. The larger it is, the more food it requires and needs to survive. She said to them and looked at the outline and pointed at an area. Here is where they are storing their food supplies, a rather rash and foolish decision actually to store all of it in one place. What would happen if, say, a fire broke out there? She asked with a smirk, and Gaara nodded, catching on. So you are saying that we need to burn their food then? Haku, watching on, spoke up. Of course, an army can't fight on an empty stomach, and many of the Cloud Nins would desert, as how many could stand and fight when they have no food? By burning their food supplies we can defeat them. Precisely, there's also a hidden passage that we can use as well. She said, but then frowned in concern. However, even if we do use it, it will no doubt be heavily guarded. We may need to weaken them first and force them to send the men there to the front lines before we can get a chance to do so. Looks were exchanged as they knew they would have to hold on until they could get a chance to attack the supply area. One other thing, Kage-sama, Chio said, and suddenly, for quick reflexes for a woman her age, produced and threw a giant shuriken and threw it at a Sand Nin and took off his head, much to the shock of all in the room. The head fell off and the body fell to the ground, but no blood appeared. Frowning, she walked over to the head and picked it up, and her eyes narrowed. It appears that we may have been listening in on, she said, and showed it to them and revealed it was a puppet's head. Konkuro. Gaara asked his brother, who shook his head. No way, bro, that ain't one of mine, he said, waving his hands as he had his puppets with him. It appears that Cloud also has someone who uses puppets, Baki said as he destroyed the rest of the puppet. Chio didn't say anything but instead looked at the head. It was too flawless. A perfect work of art. It would be beyond the ability of a Cloud Nin to have a puppet infiltrate a building, as they didn't use puppets. Except for her, there was only one person who could work so well with puppets with such expertise. And she prayed that she was wrong, as she did not want to face him. Sasori, a distance away, cursed in irritation as the radio inside the puppet he had put in had been destroyed unknowingly and cut off what they was listening to. He had recognized the woman's voice. Still alive are you, my teacher? He asked himself as he had been spying on them for the others. I commend your skills, as they haven't lost a step. But my business is not with you, but if you do get involved I won't hesitate one bit to end you, my beloved grandmother. He said and turned and walked away to head up with the rest. Later that night all was quiet, but everyone was on high alert. The moon shined high up above, providing some light. Just because it was dark didn't mean you should let your guard down, far from it. That meant there was even greater danger now. Kimimaro was at the garrison when he heard a loud sound and saw one of the watchmen fall off and hit the ground dead. "We're under attack," a sand nin shouted, and he too was suddenly killed as well. Immediately there was the sounds of battle, as you could hear the sound of steel and jutsus being casted. Quickly the sound and sand nin sprung into action as Cloud had expected attacked them at night. Kimimaro rushed out of the gate and into the battle where it was already going on. "Fire!" Baki ordered, and those who manned the ballistas unleashed a devastating volley of arrows into the attacking force. He looked out and saw the force was sizable. They might not be able to hold them off. Not without sustaining heavy damage. He said and grabbed a sand nin. "Get to the base and tell Gaara we need reinforcements at once." He ordered him, and the ninja bowed and quickly dashed off to get aid. He quickly arrived and saw that there was an uprising as many were getting ready. He found the Kage and gave his report. "I see, Awashi garrison cannot fall. I'll send men at once to help out," he said when another messenger appeared. "My lord, Uzuji garrison is on the verge of collapsing, we need men at once," he said as he was wounded. Gaara cursed. If both Awashi and Yuruhi fell, then they would be in trouble. But he didn't have all the men needed to spare. "Gaara," a voice shouted, and he turned and saw Haku march up to him. "Let me go, I have a debt to repay, and allow me to fulfill it by fighting for you," he said to him, and the Kage looked at him and nodded at him. "All right then, head to Yuruhi garrison, it appears to be the worse for wear," he said to him, and Haku bowed and leapt off the walls and quickly made his way. "Kankuro," he shouted to his brother who stepped up. "Lead a group to help retake Awashi. Tamari, I want you to stay here just in case," he said to his siblings, who nodded, and Kankuro quickly left. Haku ran as fast as his feet could carry him and soon was at Yuruhi garrison and saw that it was being overran and they couldn't hold out much longer. Drawing his blade, he charged forward and into the fray. He immediately cut down a Cloud nin who was about to kill a sand nin. "Keep fighting, help will soon arrive," he told the sand nin as he helped him up, and he nodded and aided his comrades. Haku saw that fire arrows had hit the wooden walls and were spreading. Knowing he had to stop that, he activated his bloodline and using his ice stopped the flames and froze them, ending that threat. He was lucky it was night, as during the day there was no moisture in the air and he couldn't use his bloodline effectively. But at night, with it getting chilly, he was able to use it fully. The battle was brutal as the forces squared off, fighting one another. Jutsus and bursts of wind and bolts of lightning were thrown into the air as many screamed when they made contact and were cut down. Haku knew he had to find the leader and cut him down to deplete the morale. Taking him down would cause them to retreat. "Come on then, you dogs of Suna, can no one stand a challenge to Zei, the Iron Fist of Kumo?" A voice shouted, and Haku saw who he believed to be the leader, who wielded a wicked-looking pole axe. He was large, almost as large as Wamoke was, but a few inches shorter and had red hair. He cut down 3 Suna nins at once with his long blade. Zei saw Haku and noticed he wasn't intimidated by him. "Ha! You got guts, kid, but it won't do you any good, ha!" He shouted and charged him and swung at him. Haku was ready for him and dodged it. Zei swung again at him and Haku dodged. "You annoying fly, hold still so I can crush you. Rah!" he shouted and swung again. Although he was strong and powerful, which Haku found that as he blocked an attack that nearly knocked his blade out of his hands, it was easy to tell where each attack was coming from. He didn't have any strategy, except it seemed to pound him into dust. Haku saw an opening and was ready to make his move. Zei swung at him and he grinned when he hit him in the head. But he saw to his surprise the boy turn to solid ice and his weapon become frozen as well as his arms. Suddenly he felt a piercing into his side and he gasped as he was then stabbed in the back near his lungs. Haku had activated his ice statue jutsu that if anyone touched would freeze them, and he fell into it easily. Haku then appeared in front of him and slashed him right across the chest. Zei fell to one knee as blood come out of his mouth. "I lost to someone as tiny as you. How can this be?" he said, and fell to his stomach dead. Haku turned around his back to him. "You believe size matters and over-exaggerate your own abilities. I could never lose to someone who believes strength is all that matters. Maybe in the next life you will learn not to be so rash," he said, and then raised his head. "I have defeated Zei of Kumogakure," he shouted, letting all know that he had slain him. With the leader defeated, the Cloud Nins lost their morale and started to retreat. At the main camp shortly afterwards, a messenger appeared and reported to the Raikage, who was watching the battle from afar. What? Zay has been defeated. Who could they have that could best him in battle? He asked the messenger, who shook his head. Huh, I applaud your skills and your men, Kage, he said with a smirk as things got interesting. I don't know who you had kill him, but it won't be enough. Order the men to attack Yamatai. He ordered them and they gave the signal. At Awashi garrison it was dead even between them, but even with the additional forces led by Konkuro that arrived, Cloud was slowly starting to overpower them. Baki stabbed a Cloud Nin in the gut with a kunai and avoided a lightning jutsu. At his side was Kimimaro, the two fighting together. There was too many though, and they only seemed to come at them no matter how many they cut down. Pull back, Baki shouted, and they started to retreat, running towards a narrow valley. Seeing an advantage, the ninjas of Kumo charged after them. If they were paying attention, they may have noticed figures up top. Baki was at the rear and mentioned for them to keep moving, and slowly he grinned. Now, he shouted, and as one they ducked and hit the ground. At the end of the valley was a group of crossbowmen, and they realized and fired their arrows. A Cloud Nin who was in charge saw this and casted a barrier jutsu nullifying them. Separate and take them from two sides. He ordered, and they went to do so. Suddenly he heard something from up above, and he looked up and his eyes widened when he saw boulders and giant rocks being tossed down from below onto them, crushing them. Baki smirked as the plan had worked excellently. They had lured them in, and within the narrow valley they couldn't find places to move as there was bunched up together, and their attempts to get out of the way only made things worse for them. Kimimaro, having stayed behind, was fighting with a female ninja. The kunoichi had cat-like eyes and blonde hair, and she seemed to be a formidable foe as she avoided his moves to his surprise and let out a hiss at him. You're good, just as good as I'd expect from a Kagaya, she said, and it surprised him that she knew who he was. But you messed with the wrong ninja boy, she shouted and hit him in the face and backed up and did hand symbols. Take this, she snarled and fired a powerful burst of lightning at him that hit him in the chest and knocked him off his feet and onto the ground hard. She smirked but saw to his surprise that he stood up and that his injuries healed. My skeleton structure protects me, and I have a healing factor as well. I won't die that easily, he said to her, and she smirked. Good, a rat's no fun if it doesn't put up a good fight. But trust me, little rat, in the name of the Raikage I will destroy you. And in the name of my master the Otokage of Sound I shall defeat you as well. He responded to her. Otokage, you're from Sound, she said, and then laughed. He is a fool if he sent a Kagaya here. Did he run out of use for you? Kimimaro glared at the woman at her insult towards his master and removed his shirt. Karamatsu no mai, he shouted, and from his body came several razor-sharp spikes that covered his upper body. He then grabbed a pair and threw them at her, who dodged. He continued throwing at her and she dodged as the two battled. You have claws of your own, do you not? She asked him lightly as she avoided his attacks, the vessel for the two-tailed cat enjoying herself. Well then, I suppose I'll let you have a secret before I show my own claws. She then stopped and lifted two fingers. Two secrets actually. The first is, I'm a Jinchuriki just like the Kage. I hold the two-tailed cat inside of me ever since I was little, she said to him, and he looked at her a bit surprised. You facing someone who unlike most vessels knows how to control the demon. The second, little rat, is this attack on this garrison is just a diversion. Kimimaro looked at her and realized what she was talking about. As I'm speaking, a secret force is approaching Yamatai and preparing to attack it. The defenses of Yamatai are strong, but they are not unbreakable even if the third did build it. While you're here fighting with the others, the Raikage has sent his men. He knew the Kage would send men to protect the garrisons and weaken the defenses around Yamatai, she said with a smirk. Well then, Kimimaro said to her and drew a pair of swords. After I defeat you, I'll head back and deal with the rest, he said, and twirled the swords, showing he wasn't intimidated. Yugito laughed in amusement. You amuse me, but I'm afraid that, she said, and suddenly her features changed as she appeared more cat-like, and a tail grew out of her back as her skin turned blue and her eyes turned one golden the other green as well as a pair of fangs, and appeared more cat-like as she activated the two-tailed cat's power. Playtime's over, she said with a hiss as the Battle of Yamati continued. Chapter 70. At Yamatai the battle was high-pitched as the forces of Cloud appearing in surprise after the diversion attack on the garrisons assaulted the ancient fort as they attempted to take it down and conquer it, while the forces of Suna led by the Kage were trying to stop them as they had to hold on. At the main camp of Cloud the Rakage looked on as he faintly could hear the sounds of battle. He wanted to be out there and fight alongside his men, but this wasn't the real fight. He couldn't go out just yet as this was more of a test. Plus Yugito and some of the others would lose their focus and try to protect him and not fight as well, even though he needed no protection. If nothing happens in the next half hour, give the signal for them. He ordered a bodyguard and the Jonin nodded. He looked out at the battlefield. All right, you ninjas of sand, show me just how strong you are. Said as he wanted to see just how strong they truly were. Keep them off the walls. Don't let any of them get up here. Baki shouted and kicked a ladder down to prevent Cloud Nins from scaling up as they were attempting to use them so they could climb up. He and Konkuro and those who were at Awashi garrison had headed back to Yamatai after disposing and trapping those who had attacked Awashi and came back to Yamatai. Baki knew if they managed to get a number of Cloud Nins up here they would be overrun. He turned his head and smirked when he saw his female student using her fan to blow those that had gotten up onto the walls and keeping them at bay as she deflected any kunai and long-distance attacks with her gusts of wind. The battle was taking place at Yamatai as the two sides fought one another. Outside the fort was a sizable force of Cloud Nins attacking, and they were met by both sand and sound. Up on the walls a group of medics being led by Chio formed barriers to protect them intended to those that had been injured. The iron gate had been sealed off, preventing any from getting on as its strong gates were nearly impenetrable. Leaping off of the walls is a way of getting down to the battle that was going on. Fire! Shouted Gaara the Kage, giving the command as arrows were fired from archers and ballistas from atop the walls, dozens being fired every passing second into the sea of men down below. Answering with lightning jutsus and archers of their own, the Cloud Nins managed to deal damage to the fort and destroyed some ballistas as well. High above, watching the scene with interest, was also a figure riding in bird-shaped creature made out of clay. The blonde watched it and smirked as he saw the action. He had front row seats for this and was enjoying the show. He had also planted a little surprise there as well as he revealed a detonator and waited for the right moment. His comrades might get mad at him for pulling a stunt like this, but hey, in his mind this was going to be one of his greatest masterpieces of art. Elsewhere two individuals were going at it as well, the two being the only ones in the vicinity. Kimimaro Kage battling Yugito ni the two-tailed cat vessel and the sole survivor of the Kage fighting. Yugito slashed at him with one of her claws and connected with his skin and cut him, but he did not feel any damage as he went to stab her with a pair of bone swords. She moved out of the way and sent a blue fireball at him, which he evaded. He responded by firing his fingernails at her, and she calmly brought up a fire barrier and incinerated them. She looked and saw the cuts she had made on him heal with little effort as she knew about the Kage's bone structure and their bloodline. Any the strongest blows and most powerful jutsus would damage a Kage who had mastered their Kekkei Genkai. Kimimaro stared at the older woman whose features had become more feline-like, and blue flames also appeared around her as she was using the two-tailed cat's power. She was powerful, no doubt about it, and well-trained. And for once in his life he was excited over the prospect of fighting someone who could hold their own in battle against him. Perhaps it was the warrior spirit in him that the Kage clan possessed. The two said no words to one another, and he then with his agility charged her, going for the jugular. Yugito saw it and evaded his attacks and kicked him in the chest, which she doubted did any damage to him in the strong bone structure he had. Doing hand symbols, she summoned multiple blue fireballs and sent them directly at him. Kimimaro was unfazed by it, and connecting his bone swords together by the hilt began twirling the double blade very fast and deflected the fireballs. Still spinning, he brought it overhead and threw it at her, the razor-sharp weapon now being a spinning instrument of death. She leapt over it and landed on the ground, and she turned her head and looked surprised when she saw it come back. She flipped over it again and saw him catch it when it returned to him. She smirked, thinking that was a fancy move. "That's a nice trick, little rat of sound," she said to him. "But it will take more than that to defeat me," she said, and then closed her eyes. Kimimaro went on guard, knowing she had something planned. He then opened her eyes and smirked, and he realized he was in danger as she opened her mouth and released a large fireball right at him. Unable to move out of the way in time, the fireball hit him directly in the chest, burning his skin and his clothes and knocking him off his feet and hitting the ground hard. Yugito let out a laugh as she saw him and figured him to be dead. To her surprise, he slowly pulled himself up even though he had at least third-degree burns on his skin and his shirt was burned to smithereens. He winced as he pulled himself up as he had felt that one. A normal man would have been killed if he had been hit by that. It was only because of his Kage Genkai that he survived. Although he did feel his body burning, he was still able to continue. Stupendous. It's not very often someone survives one of my fireballs. You Kageyas are as tough as the legends say. She said to him and he didn't respond. Instead he pulled out 2 bone swords and charged her again, slicing and slashing at her, and she narrowly avoided the attacks. He went to sweep her leg and she flipped over him. Using the cat's power to attempted to ran her hand right through him when he reacted on instinct and brought his swords up and caught it, much to her surprise. He then sliced her wrist, drawing blood, and she let out a hiss of pain and clutched her wrist, which was bleeding. She glared at him for his actions as he twirled his swords and charged her again. The two went at it, the cat vessel and the Kagaya, fighting it out as their movements were equal. I must admit it's been quite some time since I've fought a skilled opponent. Only the Rakage and his brother are stronger than me and Cloud. For a sound Chunin, you are capable of doing things that an A-class or even S-class nin could do. She said casually as she ducked under his swords and slashed at him with her claws. Join us, the Rakage could use a powerful warrior such as yourself. You Kagayas have been wiped out and you will too if you don't. Kimimaro dodged her attacks as well and avoided the swipe of the cat-like tail she had. My loyalty is to one man, my life debt is to him and him only, and the fact that you would try to convince me to join you is insulting both me and him. He said to her, a scowl on his face. Huh. Fool. Very well then, let's us continue. She said, and the two continued their fight. Elsewhere, Haku was returning from Uruhi garrison, having successfully defended it, when he saw what was going on at Yamatai. Mentioning to the others, he quickly headed to the battlefield and joined the fray as the battle went on. Kuchio's no jutsu. Tamari shouted and summoned a weasel-like creature wielding a scythe. The summon began spinning and became an instant spinning circle of death to all around it. Katamari took down many cloud nins, cutting them down with his scythe and sending others fleeing. Hey, watch it, you nearly took my head off. Kankuro shouted at her as he had ducked Katamari at the last second, the puppet master nearly missing getting his head taken off. Keep that thing under control, Tamari. He shouted at her and she smirked. Huh. Why don't you go play with your dolls and leave the real fighting to me? She responded to him and he growled and sent his 2 puppets into action. Gaara witnessed the battle going on as it was a standstill, and he noticed many of the engineers of Cloud working on building a ram of sorts, trying to break the gate. They were setting it up and getting it ready. He looked at it doubtfully. The gates were as strong as steel, how could that hope to break through? Deidara from above, seeing what was going on, smirked as he knew it was time for the show to begin, and getting the small detonator out, pressed the switch and activated the bomb that he had placed near the gates. A loud explosion, to the surprise of all who were there, took place as the small but powerful bomb went off and sent people flying and knocking them off their feet. Even the Rakage felt the rumble of it at the main camp of the Cloud. Damn it. Sasori cursed as he and Itachi felt that one, and he immediately knew the source. That blasted bomb maniac. What did he do this time? He shouted in anger as Itachi didn't respond or say a word to the angry puppet master. Hey, this should make things more fun. Deidara said with a laugh as the debris cleared and saw that some had died in the unexpected blast and had damaged the gates of Yamatai. Snickering to himself, he flew away on his bird to meet up with the others. Gaara looked on and surveyed the damage done by the unexpected blast. He then noticed that the gates had been damaged by it and they were preparing to strike it with the ram they had made. The ram slammed into the gate and the gate held strong, but Gaara could tell it had been weakened and it was possibly they could break it down and get access inside where the large force would overwhelm them. Destroy the ram, he shouted to the sand and sound nins as they could not allow them to break through the gate. However, the ram was well defended with archers and a squadron of cloud nins led by Dei who protected it as they prepared to slam it again into the weakened gate. The ram slammed into it again, and this time a dent appeared as it was doing damage to it, and he knew he had to do something. Getting down off the walls, he headed to the main gateyard and did hand symbols. Shukaku no Tate. Gathering the strongest materials in the gourd he wore and using his chakra created a giant sand-like image of Shukaku that covered the entranceway. The giant sand shield was impenetrable and should they break through the gate they would be unable to get past. But it required his utmost concentration and power and he did not know how long he could keep it up. Haku, seeing the ram attacking the gate, knew he had to do something or else they could be in trouble. It was heavily guarded and so it would be difficult. Leading the sound and sand ninjas with him, he made his way and quickly casted an ice jutsu onto the ground where the archers who were defending it were at. Losing their footing at the surprise attack, they lost their footing and were unable to keep their balance, which left them open to shuriken and jutsus taking them down. Dei saw what had happened and seeing a boy wielding a Zenbatto saw blood on it. "You," he shouted at him. "So you were the one who murdered Zay. Prepare to die for what you did, HRAGGHH." He shouted and charged him wielding a large axe and Haku moved out of the way. Dei killed a sound nin who tried to take him on and attacked Haku again. Haku saw that his methods were just like his earlier's and could read them like a book as he had no sense of strategy aside from brute strength. "Zay shall be avenged for his undeserved death. Feel my rage," he shouted as he swung wildly at Haku and he saw an opening and waited for the last second. The two passed through one another as Haku had swung at him, his blade cleaving through the air and going through his armor and his flesh. Dei fell down and dropped his axe as he collapsed dead. Those who attack and fight out of rage leave their defenses wide open. Join your comrade in the afterlife and ask yourself how you could ever serve a demon like the Tsuchikage. Haku said as he walked away from the body. News of his death as well soon also reached the Raikage, who was shocked that both Zay and Dei had been slain as they were two of his most accomplished fighters. "Raikage-sama." A ninja ran up to him and bowed to him. "I bring news from scouts. We have found a secret passageway that connects to Yamatai," he said, and that brightened his mood. "Excellent," he said, glad of the secret news, and turned back to the battlefield. "Call back our men, we have done enough this night. We will settle this tomorrow," he ordered, and his men went to gave out the order to return the force. One doing a jutsu sent a ball of electricity up into the air and it exploded, lighting up the sky, which was seen by all. Having destroyed the ram that was attacking the gates, the Suna and Oto nins saw the burst of light and wondered what it meant. To their surprise, the Kumo nins began retreating all of a sudden, heading back and away from the fort. Baki gave the order not to pursue as they were weary from the battle and it could be a trap. Gaara, sensing that the battle was over, removed the giant sand shield and headed up the stairs to the walls and see what was going on. "It is over for now, Kage," Chio said to him, the elderly woman standing beside him. "They will be back though, and this time we might not have enough power to stop them this time." She looked at the young ruler of Sunagakure and he nodded as he looked at the many wounded and dead. Kimimaro and Yugito were still fighting one another and there was small blue flames on the battlefield due to the ferocity of their fight. Neither had given the other an inch and both were panting as it had been a ferocious fight, as wounds were on both sides. Burns were on his body and there were nits and cuts on her as well. Neither side showed either side of yielding. Kimimaro slashed at her and she dodged and breathed fired at him. He was ready for it and dodged it. He then seemingly disappeared and reappeared right in front of him and punched her in the face. She responded by kicking him in his stomach. Kimimaro twirled his swords and went to impale her when she became covered by fire and melted them to his surprise. The blue fire didn't seem to bother her as they continued their battle. "It's been a while since I've had a good fight," she said to him. "For that you should be honored. You'll be the first person in 5 years to witness the true form of the two-tailed demon cat," she said with a grin. Kimimaro knew this could be deadly and suddenly felt his body feeling weak. "And no, not no," he said as his was having an attack. He tried to stand straight up but the accursed disease was acting up again. Yugito wasn't sure what to make of his actions but decided to finish him as she tapped into the demon cat's power. When suddenly the burst of light that had been sent was seen by them. She frowned as she knew what it meant and she wasn't one to disobey orders. "You're lucky," she said as she returned to her normal form. "I have to go now, I'll deal with you later," she said and disappeared. Kimimaro reached into his pocket and produced a purple vial and shakingly brought it up to his lips and drank the liquid. After a couple of seconds his body was better and he was able to stand up straight. Seeing that the battle for now was over, he made his way back to Yamatai. There had been losses for both sides. Many were dead or too badly wounded to be able to continue fighting. The most deaths for both sides had come from that unexpected explosion, which had caught many in its blast or crushed others with debris flung from it or had been sent flying and landed hard on the ground. Baki overlooked those being tended to by the medics in a room, applying bandages and using their chakra to cast jutsus to ease the pain they were going through. There were some though who were far beyond the healing skill of a medic. They couldn't spare the men, as those with minor injuries will have to be tended to and fast to be able to fight again. He saw that Kankuro was grumbling as bandages were being applied to his forehead as he had suffered a cut and needed to keep from being infected. Even he had suffered an injury to his arm, but it was nothing serious and it had already been tended to. He looked at those with the more severe injuries and winced as the pain they must be going through. He saw the shirtless Kimimaro putting on a new shirt on himself and noticed several burn marks on him. Although he brushed several medics aside claiming he was all right, Baki knew that he was hurting as his upper body was burned and red. He left the room and went to see Gaara, wondering what the next course of action was. At the main camp of the Raikage, even though it was late at night, he was having a meeting. We have discovered a secret hidden path that leads to Yamatai. A narrow pass that our scouts say we can use. We intend to use it tomorrow. However, they say that only one person can go in at a time. The Raikage said to his weary but still standing men. He nodded and was proud of them as they fought well and the ones who had died would not be forgotten. So the plan is for one of us tomorrow is to go there and travel the pass and get there. Only one person can go at a time and it would take time for even a small force to go. Yugito, her wrist covered with bandages, stood up. Let me go, Raikage. I am more than capable of handling myself. They wouldn't expect that way, nor would they expect me and the two-tailed cat as well. I can get there and overpower them. All I would need is a diversion so no one will notice me. I nodded. Very well, I would rather send someone else, but I can see you won't be back down. While we attack tomorrow, you will travel through the secret path and get into Yamatai and attack them. Is that understood? He asked her and she bowed, understanding fully. Very well then, rest well all of you, tomorrow we end this once and for all. At Yamatai, the insomniac Gaara was walking with Chiyo. It was at least 3 in the morning and most of the defenders were asleep and trying to ignore their wounds. Some were tending to their defenses, also trying to fix them back up for the next battle. Chiyo, I have a plan. For tomorrow, I want you to be in charge of the defense, he said, and she looked at him. I've already talked it over with the ones I trust most. I have a plan to end this. Kage, I do not understand. The woman asked him and he looked out a window. I have a plan to end this battle and win it. During our leave from Konoha I saw to it that our men brought back some uniforms. She looked at him, not understanding. I plan to get rid of the thing that's holding them together. I want you to lead the defense whilst I'm gone. I'm not sure I understand, Gaara, but I will do it, she said, not getting where he was going with this. Gaara smirked. Alright, now then, here is what I have in mind. The next day in the afternoon, Yugito Ni was at the secret area they had found that would lead them to Yamatai. Yugito, be careful, I said to her. I can send someone else to do this. I will show them the power that we possess, Raikage-sama. The blonde woman said to him. Do not worry, stick to the plan and we shall be victorious, she said with a smile, and he nodded. She then started to go and he watched her as she made her way through the rocky and tight pass which would take her to Yamatai without anyone knowing it. Unaware to him, a puppet had been listening in and was giving the info that 3S class missing nins wanted. Quickly, the Scorpion, the Bomber, and the Slayer prepared to make their move as well. Here they come, Chiyo, the one in charge of the defense, said to Baki and the others at Yamatai later in the afternoon. I hope Gaara knows what he's doing, Baki said after he gave orders to the defenders to get ready. Have faith in our young ruler, Baki. I have a feeling he knows what he's doing, she said to him, a smile on her face as the battle was about to start. Yugito was making her way as fast as she could as the attack was a diversion in order for her to get there and get inside. There she would activate the cat's power and attack and overpower them. The area was rocky and was a tight fit through at times, but she managed to make through, and after a half hour had passed she found herself in an open clearing that allowed her to have some breathing room. She started to make her way through when, "Here kitty, kitty," a voice said from above, and she looked at and her eyes widened when a small dove dive bombed her and she moved out of the way and was shocked when it exploded when it hit the ground. She looked around and saw a blonde-haired ninja wearing a strange cloak with red clouds on it on top of a bird made of what appeared to be clay. He smirked at her and she scowled. I know you, you're Deidara, a terrorist from Stone. She said and he let out a laugh. I'm glad you know me. And I know you as well, Cat Vessel. He said and she went into a stance. What are you doing here and what do you want with me? She asked him. He smirked and revealed the mouths that were on his hands and she grimaced. We've come to take you away, Akatsuki has great use for you. He said and suddenly she was nearly impaled by a scorpion-like tail. She dodged it and another ninja, this one in a strange getup. She scowled as they were interfering. Get out of my way or I'll send you to the next world. She said and activated the cat's power as the two artists prepared to fight her. At Yamatai the battle was going on, having gone into full swing. Having fixed what defenses they could, the Suna forces were trying to hold them out and buy the Kage enough time to put his plan into action. At the gate which lead into it was a force of sand and sound nins ready in case they should break through to fight for their lives as the gate had been weakened. Buy him time, Baki ordered. For the sake of everything and all we hold dear, hold them back and keep them from advancing. He shouted to the men. A watched as well, getting closer to the battlefield this time but not getting involved. He wondered that instead of trying to defeat them it seemed they were trying to immobilize them, as if they were trying to buy time. Whatever it was he didn't like. Send more men up the center and crush that infernal gate. He ordered and they hastily went to put his orders into actions as engineers with a ram similar to the one last night was being sent up. Unaware of all the fighting was a small group of cloud nins that were protecting the supplies. They had been forced to stay here as provisions were necessary. They wanted to fight but obeyed the Raikage's orders. Huh, what's that? The one in charge said and saw 5 figures. Who are you? He asked, reaching towards his weapon, and the leader of the group raised his hand and mentioned they were allies. He also noticed they was wearing the uniforms that the ninjas of Iwagakure weared. Each one was also masked as well. Earth Nins, what are you doing here? You came to help out. He asked and he nodded. Typical, we do all the dirty work and you come to get the glory. He said with a sneer as he didn't trust them. This is where we house the supplies, the Raikage is not. He was suddenly interrupted when he became trapped by sand and a look of panic and horror came on his face. The leader of the Earth Nins clutched his hand into a fist and shouted, "Desert Funeral," and crushed him to the shock of the other Cloud Nins. The Earth Nin then quickly produced kunai and shuriken made of sand and cut them down with it before they could react. Reaching up, the Earth Nin removed his mask and revealed himself. That's taken care of, not then you know what to do. Gaara said to the others who were Kankuro, Tamari, Haku, and Kimimaro. Let's set this place ablaze. After pouring oil onto the supply area which housed all the food the Cloud Nins had, they threw a torch into the area and it quickly set it ablaze, burning it and destroying everything inside the building. Let us see how well they can last without food or supplies. Gaara said as they watched it go up in flames, which no doubt had been seen by the Cloud Nins and would have an impact on their morale. The Battle of Yamatai is over, he said to the others. A frowned as he sensed something was wrong. Where was Yugito? She should have been there by now. What was keeping her? Suddenly a messenger appeared, a panicked look on his face, and told him what had happened. What? He shouted. You mean to tell me that all our supplies, all our food has been put to the torch? He shouted in disbelief and the poor messenger could only nod. A looked on in disbelief. This wasn't supposed to be happening. Where was Yugito? The news quickly filtered through the ranks of the Cloud Nins at the news and panic and fear overcame them. How could they fight without food? The sizable force couldn't hope to last without food. Their morale sinking, they were easy prey to the sound and sand nins who cut them down, and many started to run away. Rather to flee than to be cut down. Now it was time for the forces of Yamatai to be the aggressor as they charged into them and cut them down, as the Cloud Nins had little will to fight now that they had lost everything. They overwhelmed them and sent them scattering. A tried to rally his men but he could see little hope for this. Where was Yugito? What had happened to her? Had she been captured? Raikage-sama, we must retreat, we'll be in danger if we stay any longer. A man said to him. Another man came up to him. Sir, we found these near the area where Yugito was supposed to be at. He said and handed him a small piece of cloth that looked like it had a red cloud on it. Seeing it knew the battle was lost. He gave the order to retreat as they had lost. Cheers of victory came up from the forces of Yamatai as they had done the unthinkable and had bested the forces of Kumogakure and dealt them a crushing blow. Cheers went up from them, the sound and Sunanins celebrating their victory. After returning to the fort, the Kage was congratulated by his followers. The stoic Gaara unused to such praise as he was hailed as the hero who won the day with his plan. Haku watched the celebrations going on and looked up at the now night sky and the moon. "Naruto, I'll be there soon, my brother," he said in a whisper. Unknown to all three figures were riding on a clay-like bird. The bird was slower, unused to carrying so many passengers, but it would handle itself. "How much further till we get to a base?" Deidara asked Sasori. "Not far, perhaps 2 hours from now," Sasori said. He had a rather noticeable tear in his cloak from the earlier battle. "The leader shall be most pleased with our success," Itachi Uchiha said, the only one of the three standing up. Deidara frowned. Itachi had intervened at the last moment and immobilized their target. He didn't think he and Sasori needed his help, as they were doing fine without him. "Once we get to the base we shall extract the demon and be one step closer to our goal," Itachi said as being carried in the talons wrapped up and unconscious was Yugito Ni, the three having defeated and capturing her.